Coming to you from Farmer Dave's Kitchen here in Drake, Massachusetts, I'm Stacey.
And I'm Denise.
And we're here to help you prepare your share. Hi folks, today we are discussing our favorite food group,
Soup!
The mention of soup's existence has been found as early as 20,000 BC. Soup had humble beginnings and wandered its way through cultures and countries over the centuries. Cooking with a few handfuls of herbs, spices, and water could feed an entire village, tribe, or community where the individual ingredients may not stretch as far.
Definitely. So where the word soup came from is up for debate as it goes back so far in history and shows up in so many different languages. Soups, broths, and consommes were consumed regularly after a hard day of work and during illness. So these liquids were referred to as restoratif, something that restores your strength.
Ever wonder what the difference was between a broth, a stock, a consomme, and stew versus soup?
Yes, actually.
So here we go. A broth is a liquid which has had meat, poultry, fish, or vegetables simmered in it.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. A stock is a liquid with all of the above, so it can have the meat, the vegetables, fish, whatever your protein is, but it always involves simmering the bones.
The bones.
So the collagen and gelatin from the bones goes into the stock, and it makes it maybe not thicker, but it has more of a mouthfeel from the gelatin,
fuller bodied,
and everything.
Got it.
Consomme is a stock that has been clarified, so it's very delicate in flavor. And the way they clarify it, it's kind of a complicated process, but they actually use egg whites.
Huh.
And they float the egg whites on top of the soup, and they make a little hole in it, and when it's boiling, the egg whites attract any solids or any different things floating in there. I thought that was pretty cool.
That is pretty cool.
It sounds like way too much work to
Little
do.
fancy for us to cover today, but that's really cool.
It was different.
Yes.
So stew versus soup, the difference is really the intent. They both contain solids, the meat and the vegetables. Mm-hmm. But in stew, you're actually giving flavor to the meat or other central ingredient. With a soup, the broth is what's being highlighted.
So for a stew, you could use a cheaper cut of meat because you're basically flavoring that meat, and it's cooking low and slow. Okay.
And it's tenderizing it, so that's your way around using. You don't have to use an expensive cut, because an expensive cut is actually probably a waste.
Right.
Because you want that fat, you want that collagen, because that slowly breaks down over time, and it makes it more flavorful along with everything else.
Nice. Very good. So whether hot or cold, a soup provides a nutritious, inexpensive, and very easy to digest meal. So now you can make a soup as expensive as you want, but allowing vegetable scraps and less expensive ingredients time to simmer, break down, really is going to result in a delicious meal.
Mm-hmm. So I didn't really start cooking until I graduated from college. I spent a lot of time with my grandmother, and my grandmother was a candy maker. Now, candy making, like baking, is a lot of precision, and things have to be very specific temperatures and times. And so that was her fun part. But when she actually cooked, she never used a recipe. It was all about experimentation to her. She was this little 4'10" dynamo. So, I mean, at 6th grade, I was this height, so she was about that big. And her attitude always was, it's only food. If it doesn't work, remember not to do it again. As simple as that for her. So I definitely got the experimenting spirit from her, because I have that voice in my head.
Yeah.
So when I graduated from college and I got my apartment, I needed to learn how to cook, because all of a sudden I had a kitchen and a job, and I had no idea what I was doing. So thank goodness for TV. My cooking teachers at that point were Rachel, Emerald, Jacques, and Julia. I had taken about 10 years worth of French classes. So I had this fascination with French food. Well, French food can be difficult. So what do I choose to do first? I'm like, I'm going to do French food. In my head, my grandmother's like, it's only food, try it. Well, that kind of failed a few times, so then I decided that I was going to start back at the basics again, and soup was really the first thing that I learned how to cook, and that's what great. And also I had friends that came over, and it would feed an army, and it wasn't super expensive. And what I didn't realize, though, is each time I made a soup, and a different soup, they were different techniques. So every time I did a soup, I was actually learning something different from that soup. And then the next time I made it, it may be something different, or a stew. So I was picking up all those cooking techniques.
Sure.
But I was making basically the same thing. It was just different twists on it, you know? And I wound up being a better cook because of it.
Yeah.
So something as humble as soup, you can really
good cook.
Something as good as simple as soup is really easy.
Yeah.
To do.
That's a great story.
Not, you know, so
you have a great story, Stacey. So there are so many choices when it comes to soup. It can seem overwhelming. So we're going to give you a basic formula, a chart to go by. This list is not exhaustive and not written in stone. So let's just be clear about that. This is a guide. This is a place where you can become comfortable and then jump. Just do your thing.
So we have all the choices right out here. As far as when you go to build a soup, you need to pick a fat. So the fats that we put out today were the olive oil, the coconut oil, which is great because the coconut oil has a high smoke point. So if you're browning things, this is a really good oil to use. Also, if you're cooking anything with an Indian flavor, this is a great oil to use because you're going to have that slight background flavor. Butter is really good too. The butter will give you browning, but it doesn't have a high smoke point. So usually when I use butter and a little bit of olive oil, and that raises the chance of it not burning, you know, so it winds up being a little...
That's good.
A little safety.
That is a good little tip. So once you've chosen your fat, you want to choose a base. So broth, stock, veggie, chicken, beef, tomato puree, roasted pureed veggies, cream, or milk. Again, there'll be a list of this for you, so you'll get all
So we have
these.
some box stocks here. Now, there's nothing wrong with a box stock. When you're making a soup, you're using the vegetables, and the vegetables are going to enhance your stock.
Right.
So there's nothing wrong with coming home from work and, you know, find one that you really like. There's really good ones on the market now. And I would recommend getting an unsalted one. That way you have control of the salt. So if you use an ingredient in the soup that has more salt to it, or if you're making like a soup that's got an Asian flair to it and you want to use tamari or soy sauce, that has sodium in it. Or if you're going to add tomatoes,
that may have some salt too.
That may have some salt too. So that way you're not over seasoning. And doing this is also a fantastic way to get extra vegetables if you have a family that you can't get the veggies in the kids quite so easy. If you roast the veggies and then puree them and then stir them in the soup,
delicious.
They'll never know that they're in there actually.
No.
So,
no. Really, really good.
So you can use multiples of this, and then if you are using your pureed veggies and you're using your milk or your cream, make sure that you stay by the stove because those have a tendency to burn quicker.
Okay.
So that way you can keep stirring those at that point. Protein. Sky is the limit on this. Chicken, beef, turkey. Thanksgiving.
Absolutely.
Whole or ground turkey, steak, fish, tofu.
Oh, tofu, beans.
Beans. I would just use the tofu and the beans and add those towards the end of cooking, especially if you use canned beans. If you're using dried beans, you can use them closer to the beginning because they're going to have a longer cooking time anyway. But canned beans, just give them a good rinse and slide them in. You just want them to warm through and absorb the flavors. Here we have some steak. This is sliced super thin. And the way you do this is half freeze it. And then just go in and slice it. This is really, I make steak soup, so this is really good. And I just let the steak cook in the broth.
In the broth.
And it's super good. This is some chicken, and then we have some ground turkey right there. And
I think that's a good point to make, that some of these you're going to pre-cook, or maybe you had leftover chicken, or you had leftover scrambled turkey. So that's an obvious great choice. But I like that you're cooking this in the broth, so it's really giving you two choices. So maybe you found, you know, a nice little cut of meat, or maybe this was on sale, and you're able to grab that and then just cook it as part of your soup as your main dish. I like that a lot.
The other thing that's really fun is if you have your box stock, warm your box stock up on the stove. Add some of your aromatics. Aromatics would be your ginger, onion, some garlic, maybe even some herbs.
Sure.
And then you can add that to the box stock and flavor the stock, so you're enhancing it. Then go through your refrigerator and grab, if you have leftover chicken, if you have chopped vegetables, if you have chopped beets, if you have whatever you've roasted from the week, sweet potato, great in soup. If you have some of that diced up, if you have some squash diced up, make yourself a bowl of diced vegetables, put your cooked chicken or whatever on top of it, and then have your soup or your broth all heated up with all the aromatics. Spoon that on top. You can add rice to it at that point. So you're just making a clean out the fridge soup, but you're doing it bowl by bowl.
Right.
So it's fresh. You can lay everything out and just have the kids like go to town making their own. They can make their own stuff. So
makes sense to me.
All right, vegetables.
Vegetables. The list goes on and on with the vegetables. Celery, carrots, peppers, potatoes, sweet potatoes, which we just mentioned, squash, spinach, kale, green beans, zucchini. Just whatever you happen to have, whatever comes in the share that week, maybe something that you have frozen from previous shares.
The greens, like kale and Swiss chard, you're going to put them in at the very end once the soup is completely cooked, because you just want them to kind of wilt down and just absorb the flavor.
Yeah.
The nice thing is though, you know, people that say they're not really great with the raw kale and the raw Swiss chard, having those greens sliced and having them cook out in a stock draws out any perceived bitterness, because not everybody... They're greens, they're dark greens, so they are going to have some bitterness, but some people taste more than others do with that, and that cooks out in the stock. So that's another way that maybe you don't like it raw, but if you cook it in the soup,
it's a great way to get another green in there.
It winds up going to be another green.
That's great.
My favorite category. Guess what my favorite category is? I'm a spicy girl. This is my favorite category, spices. You can really make a soup your own at this point. You can go Italian, you can go Indian, you can go Mediterranean. So also in this we have some curry powder and cumin and chili powder. So that could go Mexican or Indian. Also, try a spice that you've never tried before. Garam masala was something that I grabbed just to try with tomatoes, because that was their recommendation when I saw it. Also paprika. You can get smoked paprika or regular paprika, and if you do smoked paprika along with the cumin and chili powder, you can get really this Tex-Mex smoky kind of flavor to the soup. So soup is really a great, inexpensive way to experiment with spices.
With flavor, definitely.
I mean, because you're only going to wind up, so you waste some vegetables and some chicken stock or veggie stock or water, or it's not... You know, it's not a big deal.
No.
It's only food, like my grandmother said. It's only food.
Oh, grams.
My grandmother was a very wise woman. Very small woman, but a very wise woman.
Very wise.
So, we'll be right back. We are going to make you a soup next.
Delicious. We're going to show you the process of building your soup. We're going to whip this together faster than a speeding bullion.
Oh, that was bad.
Crickets. Oh gosh. Okay. So have your veggies cut up beforehand. You want to get this done before you begin cooking. Get yourself organized. Have the rest of your ingredients all assembled. Cut your veggies to approximately the same size to allow for even cooking. So you can see even the peppers here. We've cut these essentially to the same size. Our example for you is stuffed pepper soup. You're going to love this. This will use many ingredients you most likely have from your share, or you may already have in your freezer.
Remember all those peppers we kept getting?
Yes.
We sliced them and sliced them and sliced them, and I froze them, and this is one of my favorite ways to use these peppers.
Smart lady.
Also, tomatoes. You can freeze the tomatoes, and I pull those out and I use them, or if I've canned them or anything like that. So they really use stuff that you've been squirreling away, basically.
Yes.
If you're using chicken, beef, or turkey in your soup, heat up some of your chosen fat over medium heat in a soup pot that's going to hold all of your ingredients. Now, I know you're in the moment and you're like, I'm going to just brown my meat.
Right.
You're going to have two pots then. Pick your soup pot that everything is going to go in and use that first. That way you're not giving yourself extra dishes.
Correct.
We've done that with our turkey right here. We've already browned it and crumbled it. So it's already cooked through and all ready to go, okay?
Excellent.
Once we take that out, you're going to put some additional fat in it and then heat that over medium heat. And now you're going to add your aromatics. Your aromatics are your onions, your garlic, and your ginger. They're going to add flavor to the soup as well as the aroma to the soup. That's what you
yes.
smell when you're cooking. I mean, think of cooking onions and garlic. What better smell is it?
It's part of the process. It's a part of the enjoyment of eating.
Correct. So you're going to saute those for probably 3 to 5 minutes. You just want to get a tiny bit of color on them, just golden, and that's about it at that point.
Now, would you use fresh herbs in this?
Fresh herbs would be great if we could get oregano and thyme, but I would not add them in the beginning.
Okay.
Because the fresh herbs are more tender. I would probably add that at like the 3/4 mark when everything else is added and cooked, and then strip them and put them in at that point. Otherwise, you're going to wind up losing a lot of the flavors from the herbs.
Duly noted. So add your veggies that have been cut into the bite-sized pieces and your spices and stir well. Letting the spices cook in the oil like this really allows the spices to bloom or intensify your flavors.
Little chefy term there.
I like it. Adding them with the veggies gives a buffer, so your spices don't stick to the bottom of the pan and burn. They're really going to sort of stick to your vegetables. Allow about 10 minutes of cooking with stirring occasionally. So that's a good start. Yes.
So we've started the extra fat and the onions. I used olive oil at this point and diced onions. We've got them, they're a little brown on the edges and they're very, very golden at this point, so they're nice and sweet.
Right, very pretty.
So now I'm gonna add some of the spices because the pan isn't super hot right now. I'm putting in a little bit of red pepper flake because I want a little bit of heat to this.
Yes.
Then it's stuffed pepper soup, and to me that reminds me of Italian. So I'm doing
Italian seasoning.
Italian seasoning. Now the dried seasoning is pretty intense. So where you would add a lot of the fresh seasoning, you want to do about half of the amount for this. Otherwise, you're just going to taste like oregano and thyme, and that's going to be it. Then I'm doing a little bit of salt because our broth is
right.
unsalted.
We made it unsalted,
and we also bought unsalted
Correct.
stock. So I'm going to add a little bit of salt and then a little bit of black pepper. Now I've taken this off the heat, that's why I'm putting the spices in right now. And we're putting the vegetables in right away before we put it back on the heat. So that is going to be the protective factor with the vegetables. So you don't have to worry about the spices burning.
Beautiful.
Would you mind?
Yep. Do we want the peppers now or the meat? Peppers.
Peppers.
Great.
Peppers. You want to scoop?
Let's get these little buddies in here.
And we do have a little bit of extra water in here, and that's totally fine. A lot of these peppers were frozen, so they've defrosted while they're in the bowl. The water is just going to wind up.
Oh, right, we did. There's a combination of the frozen and a combination of the fresh.
And I like doing it that way because the frozen is going to really kind of melt into the dish, and it's going to give very much a bell pepper flavor to it. And then we used some of the sweeter peppers to put in fresh, and those will stay to the tooth a little bit longer, so they're not going to be as mushy.
And they're sweeter.
And
they have a different flavor. So you're going to have sort of the base of that soup, and then you're going to have these other sweeter flavors on top, which is nice.
So this is pretty well mixed. This would wind up going back on the heat.
Now we're using the turkey today. What if we were using a tofu or beans
or something? I would put that in later on.
Okay, so still later.
Yeah, because once you get the liquids in, once we put the stock in and we put, like we're putting tomatoes in ours, that's going to give the liquid to simmer the tofu in, so the tofu doesn't wind up totally breaking apart.
Okay.
Because if we put it in now and we try and stir it, the tofu is just going to go to mush, and it's going to look like feta. By the time we're done, like it's going to fall apart just like that. By adding the tomato in now, it's giving it that buffer, so it's kind of sliding it into the hot tub kind of a deal.
Oh,
see what I mean?
I see where you're going with that. Okay.
Now, if you're going to make a soup that's got the pureed veggies, the cream, or the milk, you really want to stay right by the stove. The pureed veggies, concentrated sugars because you roasted them, okay? Then you have the cream or the milk, which has sugar in it.
Sure.
Very easy for it to scorch on the bottom of the thing, so you really want to leave it on probably a medium-low heat, maybe up to a medium, and you just want to keep stirring it. And that way you just wind up not sad because the bottom of the pot burns. Because once that milk burns, even a little bit, that permeates the entire soup.
There's
so
no being sad in soup making here, so
no.
we're not
I
going
have that.
Yes. Stock.
I'm going to do stock right in here. The perfect world, this would have cooked for a little bit longer to soften. Pretend that it did. Now we're going to add stock. Like I said, there's nothing wrong with box stock.
No.
This is an unsalted one, no MSG. And it's chicken. You can use beef, you can use veggie, whatever you want to use.
Honestly, whatever you like.
And then, because you usually top pepper soup or stuffed peppers with tomatoes.
With tomato.
We're doing 2 different tomato products. We're doing diced tomatoes. And then I'm doing a sauce. Ready?
Go for it.
There we go.
Okay. Nice. So we're gonna get this stirred together. It's so pretty.
The colors in this they're crazy.
It's a happy soup, Stacey. It's very happy.
Okay.
So we want to get this back on the stove, bring to a gentle boil, and then we're gonna reduce and simmer.
Right.
So check the veggies and your protein for doneness about after 20 minutes of simmering.
And then if you need to go beyond that, probably every 10 minutes is pretty safe, and then you can go from there. And then I would taste it to check your seasonings to see if you need to add a little bit more salt. You already have a lot of acid from the tomatoes in there, so that's not necessary, but you might need a little more salt, a little more pepper to bump it up a little bit. And if you find that it's too thick, just add a little extra stock or even a little extra water.
Or water, okay.
And that's fine.
Nice.
Now we have one done, of course.
Of course. Magic of TV.
Magic of TV. And the way I would serve this, because you usually use rice. So we have pre-cooked some basmati rice is what we have here.
Right.
So we're going to scoop that out and put it in the bottom of the soup bowl. Now, the reason that we're not cooking it in the soup is it's a starch. That rice, just like a pasta, is going to absorb the stock and the soup,
all the liquid,
which great flavor, right? But it's going to keep absorbing it, and if you mix that together and put that in the fridge overnight, and the next morning you're going to open it up, and you're not going to have any broth left.
It will no longer be soup.
It'll no longer be soup, and also the starch from the rice is basically the rice granules will explode.
Right.
And it will.
There'll be no texture to it.
There won't be any texture.
No body left to it. Right.
So we put that in the bottom. And then, would you hold that up?
Here's soup. Oh my goodness.
You get a little bit more of the liquid.
Yeah, looks nice.
And there we go.
Wow.
You know, it smells crazy.
It does smell crazy.
I think we've got everything in there. So that's the soup. So we have the rice, we have the ground turkey is what we used, so it's pretty lean. We have a ton of vegetables, a ton of tomatoes. On top of that, the spices. I mean, it's a really healthy soup, actually.
It's a very healthy soup.
Any of these you can also make doing the slow cooker. What I would do is the onions, the garlic, and the meat I would brown in a pan prior to it.
Okay.
Just so you get that. Unless you have one of those cool crock pots that has the browning feature in it, then you can brown everything in. And then at that point, I would add your vegetables. I would add all the other things, and then probably cook this. Any soups you do in the crock pot, if the meat is already cooked, you could probably do 4 hours on low.
Yeah.
But if the meat isn't cooked and you're cooking everything together, you might have to do like 6 or 7. Just kind of depends on how much.
Right.
Once this is cool, this would be great frozen. So you could make a big batch of this, which we have quite a bit in the soup pot, and then once it comes to room temperature, you could turn around and just freeze it in containers, freeze it in freezer bags.
Yeah.
But what did we learn about freezer bags?
2-bag rule.
2-bag rule. This explodes. You are not going to be happy having a stuffed pepper soup in the bottom of your freezer.
Of your freezer, not at all.
It's not a good situation. The only thing I wouldn't freeze is I would not freeze milk or cream-based soups because they're going to separate on you.
Right.
They're just going to separate on you. So.
But this is a perfect one to be able to freeze.
Correct. Would you like to try?
Yes, please.
I've already tried, so.
Yes, please, with this giant spoon.
Well, that way you can get a really big mouthful.
Oh, it looks really hot. Oh, this looks so good.
Crazy good.
That's crazy good.
Now, we did most of this right on camera, other than the fact that it needs to cook down a little bit more.
That
it's so simple.
Delicious.
So just remember, when you're building a soup, you need your fat, your base, what kind of broth you're using, tomatoes, anything like that.
Exactly.
What protein are you going to put in it, which can be anything. And if you just want to do vegetables and do like a
That's
minestrone, fantastic. Or
Fine.
you can add some white beans to the minestrone or anything like that. Then you want to pick your vegetables, have them cut similar sizes so they cook evenly. Then you go to spices, and you know the sky's the limit on the spices. So inexpensive. Try some new spices. Try some new
healthy.
dishes. Really healthy, and it's really an instant dinner. And you could do it on the weekend and put it in the fridge, and then turn around and warm it up.
Right. And this is just warm and soothing and very satisfying. Stick to your ribs.
And then if you freeze half of it, you have an instant dinner for later. It doesn't
Great.
get any easier than that. Try some soup.
Soup.